He's good on one.
I know he's good.
Poor guy.
Excellencies,
Yes, I'll get that.
colleagues, friends, we will get underway. If you could please take your seats. Thank you. It is an honor to welcome you to this Water Policy Roundtable, co-hosted today by the Permanent Mission of Canada and our sister research institute in Canada, the United Nations University Institute for Water, Health, Environment and Health, represented today by its director, Professor Kaveh Madani. My name is David Passarelli. I'm the director of the UNU Center for Policy Research based here in New York. We are delighted to be joined by an esteemed panel of experts and state representatives to consider a report launched today entitled Global Water Bankruptcy. We are joined by the co-hosts of the 2026 UN Water Conference, His Excellency Ambassador Coly Seck, Permanent Representative Senegal to the United Nations. Bienvenue, Ambassadeur. We will also hear from a member of Canadian Parliament and chair of the Standing Committee of Natural Resources in the Canadian House of Commons. He was also the head of the Canadian delegation to the last UN Water Conference and former advisor to President Trudeau on water, the Honorable Terry Duguid. Welcome, Terry. Reactions to today's report will be offered by a number of distinguished experts in the room. We have representatives from a number of member states, Tajikistan, Zimbabwe, Pakistan, and Switzerland. And I see other member states that have joined us today. Welcome. We hope to hear from you as well. And we are very grateful to all of you for your contributions on this important topic. For those of you who have had a chance to look at the report that was just launched today, you will see that it is both a call to action and an urgent and necessary reframing of the global water challenge. We'll hear more about the report from the director of UNU-INWEH in a few moments, but one thing seems abundantly clear to me, and that is that the message of this report will not land on deaf ears. In fact, I would argue that steps taken in the last 24 months ensure that we are poised today to receive and act on the message of the report. We have seen the Secretary General of the UN appoint a special envoy on water. We have seen new action by the G7 on this agenda, as well as the World Bank in its expanded vision and mission, also systematically considering water issues and the challenge of water. I will stop there and offer the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Canada, David Lametti, who will be offering opening remarks today. Ambassador, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Passarelli. Welcome to all of you here today, excellencies, experts, parliamentarians. This is a critically important topic as we prepare for the UN Water Conference in Dakar next week. I want to begin by acknowledging my old friend and former colleague, Terry Duguid, the Honorable Terry Duguid. We served in Parliament together from 2015 until I left in 2023. And I can assure you that Terry's passion for this file, this important file, has never waned, and I congratulate him on his success in moving the file along this far, and he has my full support moving forward as we move on. Canada has hosted UNU-INWEH for 30 years, and it's been supporting their contribution to water policy. I had the good fortune of being born, growing up in Port Colborne, Ontario, in Canada, right on one of the Great Lakes, Lake Erie. And water was a part of my growing up, mainly for social recreational reasons, but I began to understand the importance of water, not only in my day-to-day life, but in the day-to-day life of the planet. And it is simply the case that the way in which we manage and use water is critically important to humanity. It's no less an issue than that. Access to water, access to clean drinking water, access to water for agriculture, management of those resources is absolutely critical for everyone on this planet. In Canada, we like to start by thinking of the impact of clean drinking water on Indigenous peoples. And that is critically true as well. But every successive group that has come to Canada, a nation of immigrants, have also benefited from vast water resources. But they, again, are resources that Canada needs to manage. On the international level, there are different climates and different challenges around the world. And the only way that we will be able to move forward is to take on the challenge of accepting the responsibility and stewardship for this resource and moving forward in a responsible way. There have been critiques of this institution, the United Nations, in the past and are ongoing. I submit to you, colleagues and friends, that the management of water will be one of the litmus tests for the continued viability and vibrancy of the United Nations itself. So with that, I throw the challenge to all of you, and I thank you once again for being here.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Lamedi. And with those opening remarks and that introduction, I would like to now turn to the host of the 2026 UN Water Conference, Ambassador Koli Seck, Permanent Representative of Senegal to the United Nations. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Mr. Passarelli. Thank you, dear friends, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants. I would like at the outset of my remarks to thank the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health, and the Permanent Mission of Canada for organizing this important meeting on the launch of the Global Water Bankruptcy Report and the Water Policy Roundtable, and for inviting me to participate. I'm convinced that this meeting will provide a platform for dialogue and exchange on crucial water-related issues, as well as on the collective actions that could be undertaken by the international community in the lead-up to the upcoming United Nations water conferences. Indeed, we are all aware of the need to effectively implement coordinated efforts and initiatives to facilitate the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 6, clean water and sanitation. This imperative is reinforced by the multidimensional impact of water on the lives of individuals and communities, as well as on promoting peace, stability, and socio-economic development in countries. Finally, I would like to conclude by noting that the success of holding of the preparatory meeting in Dakar will be a crucial step towards the success of the United Nations Water Conference scheduled for the end of this year in the United Arab Emirates, and towards achieving tangible progress in realizing Sustainable Development Goal 6. We are here today to listen, and I'm ready to exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'd like to recognize also the representative from the United Arab Emirates who's co-hosting this year's water conference. I would now like to give the floor to Honorable Terry Duguid to address the room. You have heard that this is a critical resource for humanity and that we have a responsibility to show stewardship and good management of this resource. We look forward to hearing from you and your many years of experience advocating for the better use of water. The floor is yours.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, David. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and experts that are gathered around this table. It's great to be following my friend, former colleague. I'm not sure I'm going to be calling you Excellency, though. I think I'll stick with David. And some of you may know that David served very ably as our Minister of Justice and Attorney General, served with distinction our Parliament of Canada for almost 10 years. And I know his parliamentary skills will serve him well here at the United Nations. And I appreciated the passion with which he spoke and the challenge that he threw out to us. But let me start by congratulating Dr. Kaveh Madani and the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health on their 30th anniversary. Canada is proud to have hosted UNU-INWEH since its founding in 1996. Over 3 decades, the Institute has become known for connecting science and policy and for helping governments turn research into action. It has shaped thinking on water governance, capacity building, data and decision-making in countries around the world. And this report on global water bankruptcy continues that tradition. Put bluntly, the report released today is a depressing and difficult read, but a necessary one. In many places, water bankruptcy is not just a metaphor, but a stark reality. Simply put, our withdrawals have exceeded what is in the hydrological bank. Climate change, weak management, and jurisdictional fragmentation have pushed many water systems beyond crisis levels of scarcity. Canada has been blessed with an incredible water endowment. We are home to 20% of the world's fresh water, 60% of the lakes greater than 10 hectares. And for a long time, that abundance made water easy to take for granted. But we are now seeing the same pressures that are highlighted in the Water Bankruptcy Report. Some Canadian cities are drawing down groundwater unsustainably. Glaciers in Western Canada, the battery that stores our water, are melting rapidly. Drought on the prairies is reshaping agriculture. So even in a country with as much water as Canada, the signs are clear. In response, Canada has taken steps to strengthen freshwater management and coordination. We have created a new Canada Water Agency. Its home is in Winnipeg, in the prairies, close to the people who build their lives and livelihoods around water. The agency is working with provinces, territories, municipalities, Indigenous governments, researchers, and stakeholders to better manage and protect fresh water in a rapidly changing climate. As we speak, the Canada Water Agency is developing a national water security strategy because our economy, our health, our environment are wholly dependent on a resilient and robust freshwater foundation. I had the honor of leading the Canadian delegation to the UN Water Conference here in New York in 2023, the first such gathering in almost 50 years. That conference reminded us that water has struggled for visibility as a global priority for too long, even here at the UN. The upcoming preparatory meeting in Senegal and the 2026 UN Water Conference in the United Arab Emirates provide a chance to move faster on SDG 6 and to close the gap between ambition and implementation as we approach the end of the UN Water Action Decade in 2028. This is what the Global Water Bankruptcy Report calls us to do. Now is not the time to give up. It is the moment to innovate and to double down on water security and to close that gap. It is my hope that Canada can make a special contribution to the world in water security and water diplomacy, as it has in other realms of foreign policy. Decades ago, Canada helped pioneer UN peacekeeping under former Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson, who received the Nobel Peace Prize for this innovation in conflict resolution. With Canada's special relationship with water and our collaborative approach to international engagement, I believe water diplomacy can become the new peacekeeping and a key instrument of Canadian foreign policy in the years ahead, working, of course, with all UN member states for a more water-secure world for people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership, the 5 Ps of the Sustainable Development Goals. Once again, thank you to UNU-INWEH for inviting me to launch with you this important report, and I look forward to the upcoming discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duguid, for that intervention and for highlighting Canada's longstanding efforts in this space. We recognize your service, your many years of service on this agenda, and your leadership. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I would now like to turn to the author's report, my colleague, Professor Kaveh Madani, to walk us through the narrative, the call to action, and the evidence that it presents. Kaveh, you have chosen a very provocative title for this report, I think it captures the severity of the crisis, but importantly, you point out that this isn't about doom and gloom. There is real opportunity also on this agenda. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your insights. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here. First and foremost, I need to acknowledge the support of the government and people of Canada. For 30 years, they have supported our institute. They have had the vision to recognize the importance of water, the increasing importance of water for I think generations of people have contributed to our collective success. I'm thankful to all those people who have contributed to our mission and mandate, and I think we are still trying to help the member states, our colleagues in the UN and academia work together to promote water, the global policy agenda, and the effort today is one step further in that regard. So we are thankful to Canada for all of that. Ambassador, thank you for all the support. Honorable Duguid, you're one of the greatest friends of the Institute in Ottawa, along with other members of the Parliament who have always supported our mission and mandate, and we are very thankful for that. To all the distinguished ambassadors, members of the diplomatic community here, and all the member states, thank you for joining us today to talk about this important issue. Special thanks to Senegal and UAE for all the work they are doing. We are very excited about next week in Senegal as we're speaking. Some of my colleagues have already landed. They're doing some other side events prior to the preparatory meeting. So it's amazing to talk about water. And special thanks to also the governments of Tajikistan and the Netherlands who managed to mobilize the whole world after nearly 50 years to talk about water, and something that is important, so much important to us. And of course, colleagues in UN Water, all those members of the UN Water community who have not lost hope and continue to advocate for this. Distinguished colleagues from other UN agencies, the ASG and colleagues from UNEP, who share this mission and understanding that water matters so much to the world. And before I tell you more about the results, I also should thank all my colleagues back in Richmond Hill and the rest of the world for all the efforts they have put into this. And there's a message here. It might sound dark, but as we say, like if I'm some journalists asked me about this, and I said, if I'm your doctor and you're suffering from cancer, I'd better tell you today. So you can take action to be able to save the future. Yes, reality might be dark, might be sad and heartbreaking sometimes, but it's better to speak about it. As the report tells us, this is not the issue of Global South. This is not the issue of poor countries or dry countries. It's something that we share, and it's something that provides us an opportunity, an unprecedented opportunity and strategic opportunity to come together and act. So the report, we consider it as a wake-up call about something that many of the Global South nations have been warning us about or telling us about at any opportunity they found. We are seeing that a new era has come, marked by insolvency and irreversibility of some issues. Some basins around the world have continued to use more water than they can afford. With climate change, things are becoming even more limited. The budgets are becoming limited, but we continue to spend. We continue to steal water from the environment, the silent stakeholder. And guess what? For some period, the environment is very friendly and helps us and supports us, but it can lose its resilience and its elasticity. And when that moment comes, we lose our strategic assets. In many parts of the world, we are liquidating our strategic assets to be able to survive, to be able to support economies. It can function for a period until things go wrong. And that's something that the reports talks about. Billions remain water insecure, not only because of overuse of water, but also because we have failed to make water accessible to all people around the world. Surface waters are shrinking. Those are our checking accounts. Surface waters get renewed every year. The nature is kind enough and generous enough to deposit some budget, to some income, give us some income. And in the bad years, it's normal to go to the savings account and buy resilience in the dry years. But what we are seeing around the world is that the savings accounts are also draining and we are exhausting them. Groundwater is a good example. We have drained the natural assets that we inherited from our ancestors, and that's something that is extremely important. Of course, when we are talking about water bankruptcy, we don't mean that every state, every location, every basin is in its same situation. Things are very different from one location to another. Geography, socioeconomic conditions, stage of development is different. But what the report tells us is that we are continuing to see manifestations of water bankruptcy appearing in different forms and shapes around the world. Glaciers are melting. That's another major important strategic assets or parts of the savings account that we have been losing, and the consequences are dire. We're not ready to cope with this level of change or disruptions, I would say. Agriculture is one of the victims. Is one of the victims that we talk about surface, but we don't talk about the real solutions. 70% of the water withdrawn in the world is in the good hands of farmers, mostly in the global south, mostly in poor economies. Water shortage to them, water bankruptcy to them is a loss of livelihood, it's loss of income, it's hunger, it's forced migration, it's increased tension in countries and national security threats. Yet we don't have the solution, the real solution to offer. Technology is part of the solution, but it's not all, because governments, as we know, would have a hard time to take away water from them or removing subsidies, because it's a mission impossible. They need to continue to survive, and that makes the problem harder. If you look at the global water agenda, we haven't really touched this part of the problem, except for talking about better management, which we all agree to, but and some of the academic solutions that we in academia are very much used to, like remove subsidies and do this and do that. But they're very hard to implement in practice. We have soil salinization on top of everything, like land degradation that we are seeing, and all of these things together are making things harder for us. Drought are more anthropogenic these days than natural. They keep remaining in our system. Even in wet years, in the normal years, drought conditions don't go away. And that's a big alarm to us and an evidence that is shared in the report. The problem is not only quantity, as water bankruptcy might imply, it's also the issue of quality. In many places around the world, we have water on paper, but it's not usable because of the issues that we are seeing. Parts of in many wet parts of the world, that's a problem that we are facing. So water bankruptcy is not only about that, but also about water quality. And tipping points are being reached or passed in certain places, and we cannot move back. So the question is, are we ready for these things? On top of all these things, now we are seeing signs of water bankruptcy appearing in cities. Remember that urban sector is the last one to be impacted, because we're willing to take water away from agriculture and give to cities. But now we're seeing more and more frequent day zeros around the world, which is another big sign. But what is the topic of water bankruptcy? So it's not only a metaphor. It should remind us, of course, it's similar to the financial bankruptcy problem. We start with the checking account. We have some resources in our checking account that we are okay to use as long as we're not stealing from nature. Then we have the savings account that I just explained to you. And then we have the expenditure on the other side. We continue growing, we continue developing. We also have now new needs and new demands. One of those being data centers, AI, and all these things. And we want to get industrialized. We want to take advantage of all those opportunities, but then there are trade-offs to deal with. And those trade-offs become very hard to deal with when they impact the lives of those you care about, the poor, the vulnerable communities, the rural communities, the indigenous communities. Taking away water is not easy. We keep talking about the issue of insolvency, meaning that expenditure is much more than the available water. But on top of that, we have the issue of irreversibility. Some of the damage to the natural assets that produce water, the machinery that produces water is also being compromised. This is not only about the climate system, it's about everything else within that system. Wetlands, glaciers, soil, and everything that we have there, and we normally don't necessarily count them as components of the water sector. They're all being impacted. And indeed, the problems in the water sector also reinforcing climate change, and that's another thing that we don't speak about. Now, I'm telling you about the crisis and shortage and increasing scarcity. You know that well. But if you look at what has happened in the world, water consumption continues to increase. As well, the agricultural area or farmed area at the same time that we have temperature increase and some issues of climate change. So how are you going to do this mass balance? How does this become possible? Because we're taking out all the resources available. So what does water bankruptcy look like? It can look it can appear in different forms and shapes around the world. Top left, Chennai, India, a day zero in India that the whole city became water bankrupt. Survival has been possible. Systems can still bounce back, but there is a lot of pressure on them. Top right, glacier melt in Tibet, resources lost. Bottom left, Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States that inspired actually development, dam building around the world in its lowest level throughout its history. This is not the issue of the global south, it's also the issue of global north. Next to it, a lake that is looking different because of quality issues. Next to it, soil salinization. Next to it, Lake Rumia, northwest Iran. Similar trend to what we saw in Aral Sea and Great Salt Lakes in the United States, in Dead Sea, and Salton Sea, and many other locations of the world. Next to it, land subsidence and sinkholes, and what happens to you when you take more and more water out, and that's Turkey. So these things can happen, and they can appear in different forms. They're all signatures and signs. And then the question that the report asks is, can we continue calling this situation a crisis? Because crisis must mean something temporary. It's a shock. It's a deviation from the baseline. It's a temporary deviation from the baseline. But if this deviation is becoming deeper and deeper, and your anomaly is becoming your normal, and your shock is becoming your chronic condition, you can no longer call this a crisis, because crisis implies that through mitigation we can fix this issue. We can go back to the normal, but we can't. And that's why bankruptcy is being offered as a change in discourse. It's something that we can understand. We can appreciate that it's about a gap between supply and demand. It's a gap between the renewable water available and demand, regardless of who has caused it. Is it your enemy? Is it the trades of the world? Is it the industrial economies? Or is climate change? It's an issue that must be addressed locally and globally. Change of discourse, of course, would not change everything overnight, but discourse affects policy and our choices and our thinking, and it is important. One thing to note is that although the problem can appear everywhere, we're not equally impacted, because our capacity, our resilience, the capacity to absorb shocks and pressure is different. Depends on our institutions, depends on our economic capacity, depends on our socioeconomic conditions and where we are in the stage of development. And if we are impacted differently, then the one thing that the report says is that the issue that happens in another place in the world must be your issue, because the world is interconnected not only through the natural system, climate system, but also through food trades, supply chains, migration, economy, and everything. So what happens in another part of the world, as we have learned in the hard way, would affect us. And if water is a pillar of national security, if water can undermine national security, the problems can go global. Now, we hear about the warning, but what does the report says? I should highlight and emphasize on the fact that the report didn't try to provide a solution. It's even naive to think that we can solve a problem of this scale overnight, because we're calling for a change of thinking, a change of attitude and understanding and appreciating the urgency. Indeed, our reductionist approaches or tendency to come up with quick fixes is what has got us here. So we should avoid repeating that. We have to think deeper about what needs to be done, but recognize the fact that the issue of the Global South with agriculture, with farmers, is a major problem that we haven't got ready for. This is a political economy issue. It's related to everything else we speak about. And unless we think about it differently and formulate it differently, we cannot solve this problem. This problem will knock down more and more systems, and more baselines would be eroded around the world. Now, what is the positive message? The positive message is important here. Bankruptcy is not the end of the world. Is bitter. It's an honest confession to an admission to a mistake, to the fact that our lifestyle is not sustainable, our business model is not working. But you communicate properly to the stakeholders that this issue is there, and we've got to urgently address this through transformative changes, through transformation, through something that is different from our practices in the past, which were very supply oriented. We increased supply. Every time we saw a shortage, we built a new dam, we dug a deeper well, we brought another desalination plant into the network, and recycling and reuse, and all these technologies. They work only if they're combined with measures to cap water consumption, because we have learned it in the energy sector, we have learned it in the water sector. The moment you increase supply, consumption increase would follow. And if we don't cap consumption, we would repeat this problem and make it worse. But water is something that is different in this world. In the world that countries are, nationalism is growing. Countries are talking about some valid concerns. Food security, self-sufficiency, being impacted by trades, thinking about the stability of their economy, providing jobs and so on. Water is one of the rare topics that we can all agree on. Within nations, left and right, conservatives and liberals, the Republicans and Democrats, but also between nations. Global South has been talking about it, and the Global North also understands it more than before today, how detrimental these problems can be, how important they can be. So in a world that is more fragmented than before, water can be a common denominator, because it's connected to every problem we speak about. And not only it's a pillar of national security, food security, and so on, it's a medium of delivery when it comes to the Rio Conventions. Think about it. We have treated water as a downstream sector, a sector that is impacted by all other things. Climate change is impacting water, that's true, but water also is impacting climate change. So if we come up with narratives, we come up with solutions, we come up with explanations of and understanding of the fact that a dollar spent in the water sector is contributing to our fight against climate change, to our fight against biodiversity loss and desertification, plus food security, plus health and improved livelihood, then we might have a different world, or we might increase efficiency in our investment. So at the macro level, of course, we need to help countries decouple their economies from water, to reduce the pressure of their economy on natural resources. Don't use water as a job provider, as an employment opportunity provider. But at the micro level, we can, of course, work with governments on technologies, employing technologies, and also policy intervention to make things better. But we also need a new narrative. We must use the opportunities we have, including the UN Water Conference this year, to elevate the importance of water even further. The end of the Water Action Decade in 2028, the next UN Water, the conference in 2028, delivery of the SDGs in 2030, and then what we need to do beyond 2030, because the world would not stop in 2030, and it's also delusional to think that we will stop all the problems by then. So we're counting on your help, counting on the help of academic community, scientific community, to mobilize its resources, tell new stories, the stories that we don't know, and we need diverse narratives, the narratives that represents the interests and problems of the Global South, and then we can come to action and come up with things that make us all happy, and also maybe helpful, can help us accelerate some of the halted progress on some of the other big agendas that we all know how important they are to humanity and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaveh. Both for that excellent summary and for the work that went into developing this report. You've invited us to consider a new narrative that can help us take meaningful action to address this challenge. But I also hear in your intervention an invitation to consider opportunities and entry points where we can actually make change. And I just want to name two that you didn't list at the end of your intervention. And here in New York, we've been seized with this question of what our duties are to future generations. It's been a major topic of conversation. I can think of no clearer agenda or thematic issue than the water agenda to crystallize what our duties are to future generations. And simultaneously, we are working on, under the Secretary General's leadership, a way of reassessing well-being going beyond GDP. And again, here, I think water plays a crucial role. So thank you for that intervention. Thank you for that invitation. I'd now like to invite my good friend and Assistant Secretary General and head of the UNEP New York office, Lygia Nerona, for her words and intervention. The floor is yours, Lygia.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you to the Permanent Mission of Canada and to UNU for inviting us here. It's a great privilege and an honor. And congratulations, Kaveh. That was a wonderful and really sweeping vision of what is the issue before us and what we can do and what we cannot do. And it was really striking because you pulled out 4 things which speak directly to what we think, to what UNEP believes in, and to what UNEA is focusing on, and therefore let me highlight those. First is that you pulled out the assets and the machinery that produces water. You didn't just focus on the pressures and on the cures, but you said this is what is being impacted, and unless we really look at these assets and this machinery, we are going into worse situation and more bankrupt all the time. You also pointed out to the issue of consumption. The issue of consumption is fundamentally the most important problem that we all have to address across all of the crises that we face and bankruptcies. So whether we're talking of climate change, biodiversity loss, land loss, pollution, it's a consumption question. Production, yes, but consumption is much more important, and we do not pay enough attention to the issue of consumption. The issue of both underconsumption and overconsumption, the great divide that exists between the worlds and within countries. So I'm not just saying it's a developed and developing, but also within the developing world itself. So the focus on consumption and the focus on the divide, which you pull out in the context of water, is so very important. Thank you for that. The third very important point that you're focusing on is the importance of looking at the issue of national security and justice. Not just national security, but global security in a way, because we know that this water, as the environmental issue, really undergirds human rights, undergirds development, undergirds peace and security, and therefore all the 3 pillars of the UN Charter, and so does water. And so it's really important that you pull it out and make that such an important issue in the conversation. And fourthly, the fact that you bring out that this is a strategic opportunity for international cooperation at a time when things are so complicated and so difficult and so bleak. This could be one way of bringing us all together, because it's a, in a way, a technical issue that can be addressed, as you pulled out earlier. And what you say is that water is not a standalone sector, and you need to look at it as part of these ecosystems and the environmental governance issue. And here, also the work of Elinor Ostrom and the polycentric governance becomes really important, because you can link the global to local and pull out all of these rules and boundaries that she was so good with in the whole discussion. From a multilateral perspective, this report can contribute in several ways. I think you have it in the report, but let me pull it out for those who haven't had the time to read the report. It strengthens the basis for ecosystem-based and nature-based approaches, which is so important. It speaks to the context of natural capital. We have, as you know, UNEP has the Inclusive Wealth Report, which is beyond GDP, and it really looks at natural stocks and looks at how these stocks go down over time and why it's important to invest in them. And it then pulls out agendas that we need to focus on, especially on practical insights that can inform global dialogues on water and leading up to the 2026 UN Water Conference. Let me briefly speak to you what UNEA does in it, because I would be letting down the side if I did not mention that. So let me speak to it briefly, because UNEA has been seized, UNEA being the United Nations Environmental Assembly, has spoken to the issue of water ever since UNEA 1 back in 2014. So we've had not directly connected with water, but the issues and the ecosystems around water and then connecting to water. So it's UNEA 1.9, UNEA 3.10, UNEA 4.12, 4.16, 4.21. These are all the resolutions, UNEA 5.4 and UNEA 6.13. And now in UNEA 7 last month, it was about glaciers, and I'll come back to that. So what were these resolutions about? They were about pollution control, marine plastic waste, sustainable lake management, all of the issues that affect water quantity and water quality. And so having both sides become really important. And UNEP works on natural capital accounting because this is exactly why we think these are the basis for the resources that we have. And unless we focus on the environmental and ecosystem basis, we start losing a number of the natural resources that we have. The UNEA 7 Ministerial Declaration, by the way, paid a lot of attention to this. It looks specifically and explicitly at the work of the IPBES, which is Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, the thematic assessment on the interlinkages amongst biodiversity, water, food, and health, because of these interconnections that are so important. It also spoke to advancing sustainable consumption and production, circular economy approaches, pollution reduction, et cetera, which may be addressing the crisis part, not exactly the bankruptcy problem, but the bankruptcy, as you say, is not everywhere. In some parts of the world, we still have a crisis, so circular approaches may be very, very useful for us to take forward the issues. And Action 2 of the Ministerial Declaration speaks to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, speaking to the need for attention to the issue of water and resilience to natural hazards and well-being. And then UNEA 7 resolution on glaciers and the cryosphere adds another critical layer to this whole multilateral water process. And so what I'm trying to tell you is that this report could not have come at a more important moment. The water dialogue, the water conference is coming up, but the whole focus on the Rio conventions, the importance of the synergies, the work package 27 on the environment in the UN80 is also focusing on these issues and the interconnections and interlinkages. So this is wonderful. So thank you very much for this great report. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you to the Permanent Mission of Canada.
Thank you for that comprehensive tour d'table on UNEP and UNEA's actions on this agenda. Lygia, we appreciate your time and your insights always. I would now like to turn to UN Water Representative Ms. Leanne Burney. The floor is yours.
So much, and it's really an honor to be here. And I actually also grew up on the Great Lakes. I grew up on Lake Ontario in Hamilton, but we actually had to travel to Lake Erie for recreation because unfortunately Lake Ontario was quite polluted when I was growing up. I think things are improving, but we weren't able to swim there at the time. So I work for the UN Water Technical Advisory Unit, and we are the coordinating mechanism for the UN system on water and sanitation. We have over 30 UN entities who are members. Obviously, UNEP is a very key member and many others who are here today. And we also include 40 international organizations working on water issues. So I'd like to congratulate Kaveh on this excellent report, which we very much welcome. And it obviously puts the water crisis in stark terms, and it will focus attention on SDG 6 and water at this critical time. So at the moment, UN Water is preparing the SDG 6 synthesis report, and it's the third in a series, and these reports align with the in-depth review of SDG 6, which happens at the High-level Political Forum. So we will be launching the third and final report this July. And as part of this report, we conducted a survey on SDG 6, and we had over 1,000 respondents. We asked a series of questions about SDG 6, and you'll see the results in the report. But just to let you know that the respondents overwhelmingly considered that SDG 6 was useful, it was impactful, that it helped their work. However, many did express reservations that it didn't lead to the kind of systemic change that we need in countries. And so this finding very much aligns with what we're hearing, Kaveh, in this report that you presented today, that we need that systemic, massive change to really address this water crisis. So over the next year, we will really see how the international community decides on how water will feature in multilateralism. There are many opportunities over the next year. Obviously, I don't need to outline them. I think most of the people in the room know them. And also in how water will feature in the post-2030 development agenda. So we're paying close attention to that. So before I give the floor back, I did want to mention that we are really pleased to be working actively with UNU and other colleagues from UNESCO and UNITAR and other entities across the system on an effort to really bring the academic voices that we heard today and scientific voices into the 6 interactive dialogues, which are really forming the substantive basis of the 2026 Water Conference. It's called the Academic Hub. It will be launched in Dakar next week, so we're very much looking forward to that. And please, you'll be seeing more on this Academic Hub in the coming months. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a very enthusiastic crowd today. Thank you so much, Leanne, for that intervention. You know, we're having this conversation at a time when many are calling into question multilateralism itself. And I think your intervention is really helpful in pointing out that water belongs in multilateralism, but multilateralism is indispensable as an approach to addressing this water challenge. So thank you very much for that intervention. Of course, here at the UN, member states are in the driver's seat, and we do our best to provide evidence, insights, analysis to this community. But I think it's really important to hear from member states on how these messages are received and how we can take advantage of the many opportunities that have been highlighted in this afternoon's panel. And for this, I have the pleasure of welcoming 4 interventions by member states in the room. So I will begin by giving the floor to His Excellency Canibek Hikmat, Permanent Representative of Tajikistan to the United Nations. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, moderator. I wish to thank the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health and the Permanent Mission of Canada for convening this important discussion and launching of the Global Water Bankruptcy Report. I would also like to thank Professor Kaveh Madani for his sobering presentation, which could contribute also to the upcoming HLPF, where we will review SDG 6 in depth, but also UN 2026 Water Conference. Colleagues, when SDGs were adopted in 2015, the world embraced SDG 6 with hope. Water challenges were serious, yet they appeared manageable through better governance, stronger investment and international cooperation. More than a decade later, the contrast is stark. And here I would like to agree with Leanne from UN Water that billions still lack safety managed drinking water and sanitation. Scarcity is no longer temporary in many regions. It is persistent. Lakes and wetlands are shrinking, rivers are weakening, aquifers, and as we have heard from Professor Madani, aquifers are being depleted, glaciers, nature's water towers are retreating at accelerating speed. For Tajikistan, these trends are particularly alarming. Our glaciers, a key source of water for Central Asia, are retreating at unprecedented rates, undermining hydrological stability and increasing climate-related risks. Dear colleagues, this year will be decisive for global water diplomacy. The high-level preparatory meeting in Dakar next week will help shape the outcome of the 2026 UN Water Conference. The high-level political forum, during which the SDG 6 will be reviewed in depth, will again underscore the widening implementation gap. On 25th, 28th of May 2026, Tajikistan will host the fourth high-level international conference on the International Decade for Action Water for Sustainable Development in Dushanbe within the framework of the Dushanbe water process. We would like to invite all member states and partners to join us. Dushanbe Water Process Conference will be a platform for action to strengthen, among other things, cooperation, build resilience in glaciers-fed basins, expand early warning systems, and mobilize partnerships and financing to accelerate progress towards SDG 6 ahead of the 2026 and 2028. Excellencies, the journey from 2015 to today showed that while ambition was high, progress has not kept pace with the scale of global water challenges. The coming years must therefore be defined by stronger political will, coordinated action, and shared responsibility to ensure that water remains a source of development and cooperation. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that intervention. I now give the floor to Ambassador Taonga Mushayavanu, I hope I pronounced that well, Permanent Representative of Zimbabwe to the United Nations. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, David. You got it right. Zimbabwe expresses its appreciation to the permanent mission of Canada and the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health for convening what is really a timely policy roundtable and for the launch of the Global Water Bankruptcy Report. I think it's aptly named. And Professor Madani, of course, want to thank you for that incisive presentation of the matter at hand. This discussion to us is particularly consequential since it is going to inform the Dakar preparatory meeting and also the ahead of the 2026 United Nations Water Conference later this year. Colleagues, we have heard today that the world confronts a systemic imbalance in which freshwater systems are depleted faster than they can recover. I think the report captures some statistics which are startling, that 3.2 billion people live under water stress, water-related tensions are rising, nearly 1.7 billion rely on unsafe water with serious consequences for health and development. At its core, this reflects a stark reality. Humanity is living beyond its hydrological means. I was going to repeat the bankruptcy part, but I think I'll skip that, where we are withdrawing more than we are replenishing. I think that has been, but the reasons for that really, for us in Zimbabwe, this is really driven by climate change. I know that Professor Kaveh has given more reasons: deforestation and land degradation, pollution, and also unsustainable management that have pushed many rivers and aquifers into chronic overdraft. Importantly, the report calls for moving beyond incremental responses towards honest, science-based adaptation to a new hydrological reality. And for us, this is important, that we move away from traditional planning approaches grounded in historical averages and move into a realm where we are more responsive, where water governance is not treated in isolation, where sustainable water management is embedded in the broader economic, agricultural, energy, and climate policies, and also anchored in strong research and evidence-based decision-making. And in that regard, Zimbabwe values its cooperation with the United Nations University, including in the joint Master of Science program in food security and sustainable agri-food systems, which is at the Africa University in the eastern part of Zimbabwe. as well as also ongoing capacity building initiatives on climate action. These partnerships translate knowledge into practice and strengthen resilience at the community level. Excellencies, as a country on the front line of water stress, most recently exacerbated by the El Nino-induced drought, I must acknowledge that we have to think deeper, as the professor has said, and start building a comeback. So for Zimbabwe, we want to underscore 3 points. First, that we strengthen transboundary cooperation in terms of water management. Shared water resources require shared responsibility, as demonstrated by our Zambezi Water Authority jointly managing the portion of the Zambezi River between Zimbabwe and Zambia. And also, secondly, water insecurity is fundamentally a development challenge affecting food security, public health, energy systems, economic stability, and must be addressed through integrated cross-sectoral responses. And finally, increased investment in quality, timely, and accessible water data is critical, particularly for developing countries, to enable anticipation rather than reaction. And I want to give an example where a lot of boreholes are being drilled in our capital, Harare, and we are beginning to experience a lowering of the water table. So there is need for more management there. So in closing, I want to say Zimbabwe stands ready to work with all partners to advance water sustainability for present and future generations. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for that intervention. And for 2 specific points, the need to move beyond incremental responses, but also the opportunity of transboundary cooperation. I was just recently reading the African Regional Integration Report in 2025, and water is mentioned 55 times across that report and identified opportunities for better coordination across the continent. And so thank you for raising that point. I think it's core to securing concrete action on this agenda. I now give the floor to Mohammed Jadoon, Ambassador and Deputy Representative of Pakistan to the United Nations. Welcome, Excellency. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Pakistan welcomes the launch of the Global Water Bankruptcy Report and thanks the Permanent Mission of Canada and the UNU for convening this very important discussion. And thank you to all the panelists for very insightful remarks, especially to Professor Kaveh for the presentation of the report. Across regions, water insecurity has become a systemic risk affecting food production, energy systems, public health, livelihoods, and security. For Pakistan, this is a lived reality. We are a semi-arid, climate-vulnerable, low riparian country facing floods, droughts, accelerated glacier melt, groundwater depletion, and rapid population growth, all of which are placing immense pressure on already water-stressed systems. To address these challenges, we are trying our best to strengthen our water resilience through integrated planning, flood protection, irrigation, rehabilitation, groundwater replenishment, and ecosystem restoration through various initiatives such as Living Indus and Recharge Pakistan. Yet, systemic water risk cannot be managed by national action alone, particularly in shared river basins. Predictability, transparency, and cooperation in transboundary water governance are matters of survival for downstream populations. To cite one example, the Indus River Basin sustains one of the world's largest contiguous irrigation systems, provides more than 80% of Pakistan's agricultural water needs, and supports the lives and livelihoods of over 240 million Pakistanis. For more than 6 decades, the Indus Water Treaty of 1960 has provided a time-tested framework for equitable and predictable management of the waters of the Indus River Basin. India's unilateral decision to hold the treaty in abeyance last year, April, followed by material breaches, including unannounced disruptions of downstream flows, and withholding of hydrological information has created an unprecedented crisis for Pakistan's water security and for regional stability. This is not nature's doing. This is a nation state deliberately weaponizing water. Pakistan's position is unequivocal. The treaty remains legally intact and permits no unilateral suspension or modification. As we move towards the 2026 UN Water Conference, Pakistan believes the process must acknowledge water insecurity as a systemic global risk, place cooperation and respect for international water law at the center of shared water governance, and ensure that commitments translate into real protection for vulnerable downstream communities. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for that intervention. I now give the floor to Mr. Oliver Hone, Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the United Nations. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. We warmly welcome this event today. Thanks go to UNU, to the Permanent Mission of Canada, and to the drafter of the report for a really well-done presentation. Switzerland is often referred to as the water tower of Europe because we benefit from relatively abundant freshwater resources, but planetary developments are also impacting us. For example, in 2022, our rivers recorded record low levels, and that led to the creation of a national drought early warning system in our own country, Switzerland, where we're not necessarily connected with the word drought. Last year, some of you may have seen that in the news, a glacier collapsed in the Alps. It buried an entire village, which luckily was evacuated before, but still it completely destroyed an entire village in the Swiss Alps. So this really also brought it home to the population. This really also impacts us, and I think many of the speakers have alluded to the global nature of this challenge. We therefore strongly support global efforts to elevate water as a global priority and to accelerate progress towards SDG 6 as we get closer to the 2030 deadline. We hope and believe that this year's water conference will be a wake-up call, just as the report. I think at the end you said very nicely, the bankruptcy is not the end, it's the beginning of really moving towards more decisive action altogether. And we believe that the conference should then really lead to concrete commitments to realizing the human rights to water and sanitation for all, especially for people in vulnerable situations, through rights-based governance that recognizes water as a common public good, essential to life, dignity, healthy societies, and resilient economies. We're also pleased to have been chosen by Senegal as a co-chair for Interactive Dialogue 1 on water for the people, together with Ghana. We continue to work here in New York, also in Geneva. I'm happy to see IUCN here. UNEP, of course, also has an office there, and others, because we do believe that we all need global multilateral institutions to guide us through this challenging time. So thank you very much, and congrats again to the report.
We will welcome warmly every call for support for multilateral institutions. Thank you for that intervention. As Kaveh likes to say, water is the closest thing that we have to a common denominator, and I think your intervention points out that no country will be untouched, and I think it's a message that resonates from today's intervention. So thank you for that intervention. I now would like to give the floor to the last member state intervention, His Excellency Ambassador Francisco Jose da Cruz, the permanent representative of the Republic of Angola to the United Nations. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
No, thank you for giving me the floor. I would like to start by thanking the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health, and the Permanent Mission of Canada for convening this meeting. Our thanks also to the panelists, mainly to Professor Madani, for their timely and thought-provoking analysis of the water situation. Water is not only a sectoral issue. It is a foundation for sustainable development, social stability, and economic resilience. The notion of living beyond hydrological means resonates deeply with many developing countries, particularly in Africa, where climate change, recurrent droughts, and land degradation have already placed severe pressure on water systems and livelihoods and fueled conflict and instability. The African Union has decided as the 2026 Team of the Year to be assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063, reflecting a vital commitment to life, development, and climate resilience. For Angola, water security is intrinsically linked to food production, energy generation, public health, and climate adaptation. Strengthening water governance, investing in the resilient infrastructure, and promoting integrated water, energy, food approach remain the country's strategic priorities. Excellencies, this report reminds us that addressing water challenges requires not only better management, but also stronger international cooperation, adequate financing, and science-based decision-making. We recognize the importance of today's briefing for the upcoming Dakar Preparatory Meeting and the status and ambitions of the 2026 and the 2028 UN Water Conference processes. We need to align priorities, identify concrete avenues for engagement, and ensure that commitments are matched by adequate means of implementation, including financing, capacity building, and technology transfer. In this regard, Angola looks forward to contributing constructively to the preparation of the 2026 UN Water Conference and to advancing collective action in support of SDG 6. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for that intervention. This work cannot be done without partners, and we cannot seize these opportunities without partners. And we have today in the room 3 partners that we are going to invite to make interventions to react to the report. And I'd first like to call on Ms. Sophie Sandstrom-Jaffe, Permanent Observer of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, for her intervention. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much to Canada and the United Nations University for organizing this very important event here today. I will try and be brief. The report is very timely, and I think it comes at such a good time as we're heading into Dakar and towards the UN Water Conference, and having just had the announcement of the co-chairs of the 6 dialogues as well. The 2023 conferences had so many good recommendations coming out from it, and one of it was this call to establish a science policy platform going forward to ensure that policymaking at all levels is informed by the best available science, and that we have opportunities for interaction between policymakers and scientists. And today is a good example of why that interaction is so important. The report has so many good insights and recommendations that can really inform our thinking towards December and towards what should come out from December. And one of the findings that I want to highlight and that really stood out for IUCN and very much aligns with where our thinking is at on this topic is the phrase from the report that existing governance and agendas are no longer fit for purpose. And I think our task for the next 10 months is really to think, what does that mean? What does that mean if the governance framework globally isn't fit for purpose, and how can we address that in these very challenging times for multilateral action and geopolitical tensions that are kind of affecting many. I also really wanted to highlight the point that was made about the need for data and science, and for more cooperation on data, on sharing data, on having standards for both data collection, but also sharing data. As well as, of course, what was mentioned by many, the need to really enhance ecosystem-based approaches and nature-based solutions to protect and restore freshwater ecosystems. So very much looking forward to the Dakar meeting, and thank you to Senegal for kindly hosting us there. And thank you to all for this meeting today.
Thank you so much for that intervention. One interesting feature of the current international multilateral environment is that while we are struggling to strengthen and build new institutions, we are seeing a proliferation of science policy interfaces in many of these spaces in response to global challenges. So thank you for pointing out that call. I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Elizabeth Koch, who is representing the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of the Women in Water Diplomacy Network, I'd like to thank you all, of course, for this enriching discussion here today. As we lead up to this very exciting meeting taking place in Dakar soon, and really a dedicated year focused on water 2026. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm the process support team lead for the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. This is a community of women water decision makers and experts originating in the Nile Basin and growing to a sisterhood involving women water diplomats in Central Asia and Afghanistan, the South Caucasus, Southern Africa, the Americas, and next week our first event in West Africa, hosted by our colleagues in the Senegal River Basin Commission and many other partners there. We're very excited, but of course the report and the discussion today has been very sobering and reminding us again that we must have great resolution and build strong coalitions, and that no one is walking this path alone, and there's nothing like water to remind us we're all in it together. I really want to thank UNU and really the whole team at UNU and Professor Kaveh Madani for his support of the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. We were mentioned in this report in brief with focus on the real importance of bringing women's leadership to the front lines of decision making. Communities like ours bring together frontline decision makers all around the world who have deep expertise and experience in combating these seriously complex challenges. I like Professor Madani's framing of looking for the opportunity, of course, and there are many. We know a great deal about what we can do to improve our situation, both in terms of water security and the gender equality that lies at the heart of water sustainable futures. I want to mention that our community is coming together on Saturday in Dakar, 100 women water diplomats from all over the world, about 50 countries last time I checked. Under 30% of them are young people from West Africa, and that's exciting to me. We need to foster a safe space, an inclusive space, one that brings a variety of different complex expertise to the table together. So we're very excited to do our small part in convening a dialogue to bring focus to the issues of water for cooperation. It would be an error to not thank our dear partners, Finland, in this process. Finland is the co-chair of the thematic dialogue on water for cooperation together with Zambia. And they are investing in creating an inclusive and effective participation process for women, young people, indigenous leaders from all over. And this is really important. We know that this type of targeted investment makes a huge impact on today. And we know that the legacy will stay with us for tomorrow. So we're inspired by this. We don't take this unique opportunity lightly. The world is getting more difficult to convene people together in some ways, bring people together across borders and times. So this is an opportunity that we're very invested in. Women are disproportionately underrepresented in these forums, these UN Water Conference, the COPS processes, these high-level decision-making processes. But women are at the front lines of these challenges and are disproportionately affected by the outcomes. So this is an investment we have to make as a community. Indeed, we really must see it through for those issues of peace and security that you so aptly mentioned. The upcoming UN Water Conference will be, of course, very important, in part to elevate water, but in part to set a tone for the future. You mentioned Tajikistan and Netherlands convened after almost 50 years. I mean, bless you, but we have so much more work to be done, and what we need to do together is set a path forward to create that inclusive decision-making process that will keep bringing us together. I really want to close with just a thank you to the partnerships and solidarity expressed in this room for some of the critical issues raised by this important report. When I was last at the United Nations with my colleagues from the network in July, our Women in Water Diplomacy Network co-chair of our Leadership Council, Dr. Zodwa Dlamini, turned to the Senegal and UAE co-chairs with a commitment expressed on behalf of our network to be there for the partners, the co-hosts, the member states to join forces. I believe her words were, "We're ready to rock and roll." So we recommit this shared commitment to this agenda, and we thank you for convening and motivating this important conversation today.
Several speakers have spoken about how important water is to the future generations agenda, and there's no way of actioning that without creating space for women and youth. And thank you, and for your work and your organization's work in creating those spaces. So thank you for that intervention. We have one final scheduled intervention from UN Global Compact, Ms. Tonilyn Lim. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting the UN Global Compact to this important discussion. For those of you who don't know us, we at the UN Global Compact, we focus on mobilizing business towards sustainability impact. Water is an extremely material topic for business, and addressing water-related risks and capitalizing on water stewardship opportunities are central to responsible business conduct and delivering on the SDGs. Businesses operating in the same basin share the same risks, even competitors. So on that basis, businesses are driven to do basin action work and improve the health of basins where they share the same resource and risks with other businesses. As such, the UN Global Compact's Water Resilience Coalition and CEO Water Mandate are voluntary initiatives driven by business cooperation with public sector, among businesses and civil society to strengthen 100 priority water-stressed basins globally. We are focusing on the 500 companies that are working with us, that are committed to collective positive water impact in the 100 priority basins. And just to let you know that the company action has already kicked off in 20 of these 100 basins, and we would like to work further with you and our other partners to increase the number of basins that we improve. On the policy space, from the business side, they are very interested to work with the UN, public sector, also with the communities, to co-invest and to establish blended finance facilities so that private capital can be deployed more effectively towards SDG 6, among others, through joint financing schemes. I would like to also mention that the Water Resilience Coalition Corporate Investment Facility is already established, and thanks to the governments of Netherlands and Luxembourg, who at the World Economic Forum in Davos committed support to funding the facility so that we can identify impact investment and blended finance vehicles for private sector investments on water. So our goal is to mobilize capital towards a multi-billion-dollar pipeline to increase the health of these water-stressed basins. Second area of work will be to establish private sector basin collaboratives where we convene businesses along with governments and NGOs so that we can pool resources to prioritize, invest, and monitor water-positive projects going forward. Data sharing and monitoring, as also emphasized, is very important to business who are very concerned about results that are measurable and that drive further impact. So we would like to strengthen data sharing and basin monitoring in these basins to enable more effective water action. Also, a policy priority would be reforming water pricing. For businesses at the municipal, industrial, and agricultural use, water pricing need to be enhanced so that the value of water can be actually established, and also to incentivize stewardship going forward. To end, just to mention that at the UN Water Conference towards the end of the year, we are looking to announce a new private sector investment in blended financing and impact investment vehicles. We are also looking to announce new collaborations between businesses at the basin level to improve system resilience, and we will release a follow-up to the 6 key policy unlocks for corporate water stewardship that we published in the 2024 conference. So we all look forward to seeing you there and to discussing further and to celebrating our collective results. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that intervention. This brings us very close to our time. We have only a few minutes left. I will have a few concluding remarks, but let me just quickly scan the room to see if anyone has a last-minute burning intervention that they would like to make before we wrap up today's roundtable. Please, Professor.
Hi, my name is Reza Kambilbardi. I'm the executive co-director of the first United Nations University Hub in the United States. You mentioned education and Kaveh mentioned technology. And I want to touch in those 2 points because without education and educating the next generation of the policymakers and the scientists and the engineers, we will have a hard time to deal with this water bankruptcy. Water bankruptcy is here, it's going to stay here, it's even going to get worse. So I want to congratulate Kaveh for having this report coming out, and I wish every university, they use that report as a reading papers, not as textbook, but as something that the student get educated about the water bankruptcy. And some of my colleagues are here. I'm going to encourage them to use them in their classes at City College. The next one is technology. They mentioned the data sharing and also some of the issue with the data. Water issue is something that the data does not exist globally. There are certain countries that they have more data. There are certain countries, especially in the global south, there are lack of data. And we have to use the technology to get the data there because water bankruptcy is here today, but maybe it is going to be much worse next year. Maybe it's going to be 3 times worse the year after that one. So prediction becomes an important issue. And using some of the latest technology for prediction, such as satellite remote sensing, such as AI, which is going to be here, is crucial in getting ahead of the curve. And that was what my comment.
Thank you, Professor, for that intervention and for your partnership also to the United Nations University. Kaveh, I think you've had a successful report launch. What I hear in the room both is a receptiveness to the narrative that you've invited us to consider and act upon. And I think what we've also heard in the interventions is a surfacing that the water agenda is an agenda of shared interest. It's an opportunity to show solidarity. It's an opportunity to rebuild trust in the multilateral system through transparent shared rules and burden sharing. And I think it's an opportunity that we can't pass up at this moment. So thank you for this invitation. Thank you for the framing. Thank you to all of you, Excellencies, colleagues, friends, for having given us your time today and for partnering with us on this agenda.